Learners, welcome to today's discussion. Today we are going to look at the extraction of metals, specifically the extraction of iron metal. So before we look at the question, let us look at a short explanation on how iron is extracted. Remember, iron is one of the elements that is found in the middle of the reactivity series, and therefore the method of extraction is reduction. Under reduction, we use reducing agents, and the reducing agents we use are two. We can either use coke, which is carbon, or we use the main reducing agent, which is carbon 2 oxide. Having known the method of extraction, we need to look at the chief ore or the main ore for the extraction of iron. Iron is extracted from its chief ore, which is hematite, whose formula is Fe2O3. Apart from the chief ore, we also have other ores. The other ores that can be used to extract iron, we have magnetite, whose formula is Fe3O4. We can also extract iron from iron pyrites, which is FeS2. The last one is siderite, which is iron 2 carbonate. All these are the ores that can be used to extract iron. So if you look at this blast furnace, we have three regions which are represented by L, K, and J. At the lower part of the blast furnace, near the tuyeres, we have a temperature of 1600 degrees Celsius. Then we go to the middle part where the temperature goes down to around 1100 degrees Celsius. Then we have the uppermost part that has a temperature range of between 600 to 700 degrees Celsius. So we begin analyzing now the blast furnace. Remember, from the upper part is where we introduce the chief ore, and the chief ore is iron 2 oxide. We also introduce limestone, which is calcium carbonate. And number 3, we also introduce coke into the blast furnace. Number 1, the calcium carbonate is decomposed once it gets into the blast furnace into calcium oxide, a solid, and carbon 4 oxide, which is a gas. The calcium oxide formed from the decomposition of limestone reacts with the main impurity in soil, which is silica, to form calcium silicate, which is known as slag. Then from there we have the carbon 4 oxide that is formed. The carbon 4 oxide that is formed is reduced by the coke into carbon 2 oxide, which is the main reducing agent in the extraction of iron. Finally, the carbon 2 oxide that is formed from the reduction of carbon 4 oxide reduces iron 2 oxide or into iron metal, and carbon 4 oxide, which is a gas. For us to balance the equation, we write 3 behind carbon 2 oxide, 3 behind carbon 4 oxide, and a 2 behind iron for the equation to be balanced. So let us try to answer the questions that we have. And the first question we have is, name 3 substances contained in the charge mixture. And remember, the charge mixture contains the chief ore, which is iron 2 oxide. It contains limestone. We have already said that limestone is used to remove impurities. And lastly, number 3, we have coke, also known as carbon. Those are the 3 substances contained in the charge mixture. Next we have B. Name the substances labeled A and B. Remember, the final products from the extraction of iron will be slag and iron, which is in molten form. But remember, slag is less dense than molten iron, hence floats on the surface of the molten iron. So substance A is calcium silicate, which is commonly known as slag. Then B is molten iron. B is molten iron. We move down to part C. Arrange the regions J, K, and L in order of decreasing temperature. Decreasing means we begin from the highest to the lowest, and in this case, the region L has the highest temperature of 1600 degrees Celsius because it's closer to the point where we pump in the hot blast air, followed by K, and lastly we have J that has the lowest temperature. From there we move down and look at part D. Write an equation for the reaction that occurs at or in region L. Remember, this is the lowest end where we have carbon being burnt in air to produce carbon 4 oxide gas. Remember, it is this carbon 4 oxide that is going to be reduced to carbon 2 oxide in region K. Then the carbon 2 oxide will reduce the iron 2 oxide into iron metal. E. What is the function of the tuyeres? In this case, this is to provide the blast of hot air. To provide a blast of hot air. So somebody can ask, what would be the function of the blast hot air? This blast hot air provides the required temperature for the reactions that take place in the blast furnace. F. Distinguish between cast iron and wrought iron. Remember, wrought iron is the pure form of iron, but cast iron is an alloy of carbon and iron with other impurities in between, and therefore we can say that cast iron is more impure than wrought iron. G. Write an equation for the reaction between heated ion and chlorine. We have heated ion plus chlorine gas. This one is going to give us iron 2 chloride, which is a solid. And for us to balance the equation, we write 2 behind iron 2 chloride, and then 3 behind chlorine, and 2 behind iron. Moving down to H. Iron 60 is a radioisotope of iron of the half-life 2.6 times 10 raised to power 6 years. Its ultimate decay product is nickel 60. Write a nuclear equation for this process. This is radioactivity, and as such, we are going to try and write this equation. We have iron 60. It means iron has a mass of 60, but the atomic number is 26. It is undergoing radioactivity to form nickel, and we are told that nickel has a mass number of 60 and it has an atomic number of 28. Remember, if a radioactive material undergoes radioactivity and the mass number remains the same, it means it has given out a beta particle, and a beta particle is the same as an electron, which is represented with a mass number of 0 and an atomic number of -1. But remember, from 26 to 28, it means it has increased by 2, and therefore we are going to multiply this by 2, such that 2 times -1, you get -2, plus 28, you come back to 26. Then of course 2 times 0 gives us 0 plus 60, because the equation must be balanced. Next question, state one use of stainless steel. 1. Stainless steel can be used to make surgical instruments. 2. It can be used in making sinks. Number 3, it can also be used to make other equipment like vats, etc. Thank you for watching and welcome to this channel. And in case you have questions that you would like us to clarify, kindly reach us through the comment section, and we shall be glad to address your concerns accordingly.